Today we're going to expand what we learned with absolute value equations and move on to absolute value inequalities. I am going to ask you to do a lot of thinking today, so please try to make sure you're working through the problems before you're just looking at what I write. Okay, so absolute value inequalities, they can be written as compound inequalities, which we worked with before, the and or the or statements. I'm going to ask you to try to figure out why. So I want you to think about this before I show you the answer. What does the absolute value of n is less than 3 mean? Okay, I hope if you think like, what does the absolute value of n equals 3 mean? That would mean that n is exactly 3 spaces away from 0. Okay, so if you were thinking and you came up with this, then I am really proud of you. Absolute value of n is less than 3 means that n is less than 3 away from 0. So I want you to try to graph this on a number line. So here's my number line, and I have 0, and I want to figure out what are all the places that are less than 3 spaces away from 0. So you probably remember that 3 is exactly 3 spaces away from 0, and negative 3 is as well. Okay, so I'm looking for everything that's less than 3 spaces away from 0. I think it's kind of intuitive that everything right in between the negative 3 and 3 is less than 3 spaces away from 0. But negative 3 itself is not, so we're giving that an open dot. And 3 itself is not, so that's also getting an open dot. So if I ask you to write this as a compound inequality, try to do that on your own. So look at that number line and think what's happening. See if you can make a compound inequality. Okay, here is the correct answer. You should have something like this. Negative 3 is less than n and n is less than 3. This is an and statement and is between negative 3 and 3. Okay. Well, what if I switch this to absolute value of n is greater than 3? Can you think about what that means before I tell you? I want to pause. Okay. I hope you came up with this. It means that n is more than 3 units away from 0 on the number line. So absolute value of n is greater than 3. That means we're looking at everything that's more than 3 units away from 0 on the number line. If you graphed this relationship, I wasn't smart this time. I didn't put in a number line already. I'll put in my 0. Okay, and I know that 3 and negative 3 are exactly 3 spaces away from 0. So I'm looking for everything that's further than that. So this time, like 4, 5, and 6, all these numbers are, and to the right. And negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, etc. All these numbers are, and to the left. So outside, those are further than 3 from 0. And 3 and negative 3 themselves, they are not. So we are going to give those open circles. Okay, and try to write that one as a compound inequality. Right, absolute value of n is greater than 3 as a compound inequality. Okay, I think you can kind of see from the graph or just the relationship in general that this is an or statement. The answer is n is less than negative 3 or n is greater than 3. Okay, so I'm going to use that concept of the distance away from 0 being greater than or less than a certain number to help us establish the rules for solving absolute value inequalities. So the first rule is to solve the absolute value of a is less than b, if b is a positive number, you can just solve this compound inequality. Negative b is less than a, and a is less than b. Okay, this is an and statement. A is in between those two values, negative and positive b. If I give you something where it's to solve absolute value of a is greater than b, where b is positive, then this is going to look like that. Absolute value of n is greater than 3, where you're going to get an or statement, a is less than negative b, or a is greater than b. So something like that. This only applies when b is positive. These rules do apply to less than or equal to and greater than or equal to as well. Okay, so let's work out a couple examples that are a little bit more challenging and see how you can do. All right. So if I want to solve the absolute value of y minus 5 is less than or equal to 2, then what I'm saying is y minus 5 itself, this quantity right here, y minus 5, that has to be less than or equal to 2 spaces away from 0 on the number line. So if I don't remember the rules off the top of my head, I'm going to say, oh, less than or equal to 2, that's in between them. This is going to be an and statement. So this value in here, y minus 5, it needs to be less than 2 spaces away from 0, which means it could be less than or equal to 2. It also needs to be more than or equal to negative 2. Okay, so now if you've set up your compound inequality, you've actually done the hardest part because most of you are really good at solving compound inequalities. So you can either break that up into two separate ones, or you can do my personal favorite technique, which is doing the same to all three sides. So I'm going to get y alone. I'm going to add 5 to both sides. Negative 2 plus 5 is 3, which is less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to 7. And that is my solution, I think. I'm going to graph it on my number line. So I have 0 here. I'm going to put in 3, 7, and I want y to be in between 3 and 7 inclusive. So 3, it does work. It gets a closed dot. So does 7. And every number in between those. And I'm just going to check a number in between those, just kind of see if I'm right. So I'm going to pick 4 because it's in between those. 4 minus 5, that's negative 1. The absolute value of negative 1 is 1, which is less than or equal to 2. So at least I have a pretty decent idea that I'm right. At least the first thing I checked was true. Didn't check everything, but that one worked. All right, so if I want to do this, I'm going to solve the absolute value of n plus 3 is greater than 4. So this time I'm thinking about it. If I forget if that's an or an and, I'm going to look there and I'm say, oh, okay, greater than 4. So it needs to be more than 4 spaces away from 0. So it looks like I'm going outward this time. Oh, looks like that's going to be an or. So I think n plus 3 has to be greater than 4, or n plus 3 could be less than negative 4. Either of these could be true. So I'm going to solve this by doing the same thing to both sides. I've got n is greater than 1, or if I subtract 3 here, n is less than negative 7. I'm going to graph that on the number line. So I've got 0, I've got 1, I've got negative 7, and I'm going to say n is greater than 1, so that's open circle on 1 going right, or n is less than negative 7, open circle on negative 7 going left. And I'm going to check a number just in one of those areas. I'll check negative 8, it's over here. Let me use a different color, but negative 8 plus 3, that's negative 5. The absolute value of negative 5 is 5. That is greater than 4, so that's good. It looks good. If I check something over here, like, say, 3, and I could do absolute value of 3 plus 3, well, that's 6. Absolute value of 6 is 6, which is greater than 4. Both of the areas I shaded seem to work, so that's a good sign. All right, let's try a word problem. Yay, word problem. It says the ideal diameter of a piston for one type of car is 88,000 millimeters. The actual diameter can vary by at most 0.007 millimeters. I want you to find the range of diameters for the piston. So that's saying my diameter cannot be more than 0.007 millimeters off of the 88,000 millimeters that a diameter usually is. So if I take my diameter, I'm going to call that D, and I subtract 88,000. Okay, well, remember your diameter could be less than or more than 88,000, so you might be getting a negative or a positive number for that. So, but I want the difference between those two, the positive difference between them, to be less than or equal to 0.007. So I'm going to say the absolute value of this, because I'm only concerned about the positive difference, how far that is away from each other. I want that to be less than or equal to 0.007. So if I'm going to solve this compound or this inequality, I have an absolute value inequality here. I want the difference between the actual diameter and 88,000 to be less than or equal to 0.007. Either way, it could be positive or negative difference. So I'm going to say, oh, this is an and statement. So this is going to be a compound inequality like this. Negative 0.007 is less than or equal to D minus 88,000, which is less than or equal to 0.007. I'm going to solve this by adding 88,000 to all three sides. Okay. And when I do this, got to work on my mental math skills. Obviously, this side is 88,000.007. And this one's going to be 87,999.993. So that's less than or equal to D, which is less than or equal to 88,000.007. So it'd be good, since it's a word problem, diameter is between these numbers of millimeters. Okay, and I'm just going to shorthand it. That millimeters. Just because I'm running out of space. You could do better on your homework. All right. So this is a tough type of problem usually for people, but remember, if we are looking for like it varying, you're looking for the difference. All right, so let's think critically today. So you're going to have to really think a little bit beyond what I've been even telling you. What are the solutions of absolute value of x plus 4 is greater than or equal to, or just greater than in this case, negative 5? Okay, so I want you to really think about that. What are the solutions of absolute value of x minus 3 is less than negative 2? Okay, I am not going to tell you the answers this time. This is another way you can earn a chip. I'll say 2 chips, 1 for each part. Can you figure out what the solutions are and why? Be able to explain this to me, and make sure you ask about it in class because I really want to talk about this and see how many of you really thought critically about it. Good luck. Hope you do well, and I'll see you in class.